discussed that the shulchan is something that can be mekabel tumah, and we asked that it can be a receptacle for tumah. We asked why should it be a receptacle for tumah when it's something that is stationary and something that is stationary. Also, the nachas is not mekabel tumah. So we said a couple of times a year they would remove it from the base from its place and present it to the people to show them that the ruchi baschem, the Abish's love for you, and look at the miracle that's being performed over here. And so then the Gemara's question is, why do you have to give us that reason? You could simply say that the table is subordinate or is secondary compared to the coating on the table. And it was gold on the table, so that's why it's mekabel tumah. Because when it comes to to metal, even a flat metal is mekabel tumah, so that is why it's mekabel tumah. That was a question that we asked, and then we said, so we're up to right now. And then we said, according to the Rabbi Yochanan, he said it doesn't matter whether the coating on top is actually nailed in and embedded in, or whether it's a separate piece. If there's a coating on top, generally whatever's underneath is bottled to that. So that's the reason why the shulchan is a mekabel tumah, even though it's a wooden table, but there is a gold covering on top of it, and it's bottled to that. So now we're up to the Gemara over here. If you want to say that the reason why in this case it's not secondary compared to its cover, because it's not stam wood, this is cedar trees, and it's very, very, it's very chashuv, and therefore botli, and that's why it's not really considered secondary compared to the cover. Then that would make sense only according to the Shlakish. That would make sense according to Shlakish. He said, Shanu. He said, when do we say that when in the top of the page when we talked about you cover it with stone and it has a din now of stone, is only talking about wood which is called axaglus. Rashi says it's not necessarily a type of wood, but it's from a region called axaglus, and it's not that chashuv. It's not that chashuv. Habayim didn't say I'm come from overseas. But if it comes from this other kind of wood, which is superior wood, chashiv is chashuv v'loy botli, and it's not bottle shop. Then you have a valid answer. You have a valid answer why the shulchan is not bottled to its cover, because it's made of very chashuv wood. So then the question will be, so why is it mekabel tumah? So we have to explain that it's portable, it moves about. El Rabbi Yochanan says, I don't care what kind of wood it is. It is still bottled compared to whatever the cover is. It's talking about the case of the stone there, but whatever's on top, the ma'ikul mema, what are you going to say? Why do you need to give me the reason that it was portable? Just tell me simply that the table is bottled to its cover, and that's why it's mekabel tumah. Says the Gemara, shiny shulchan. The shulchan is different. Why it's not bottled? You know why it's not bottled? Is because the Rachmana karya eitz. The Torah makes a big deal and highlights the fact that the structure of it is made out of wood. And therefore, because the Torah refers to it, we say Rachmana means Tanakh, because the Torah refers to it as wood, therefore it is not bottled to anything else, and it should not be kabel tumah unless we have that reason, because it's portable, it's moved about. Remember, it says in Yecheskel, HaMizbeach eitz, the Mizbeach of wood, Sholosh Amas is 3 amas tall, Orko Yishtayim amas, and it's 2 amas long. So the Torah emphasizes the fact that it's a Mizbeach of eitz, wood Mizbeach. And then it continues, and it says, Umikzoyos, and its corners, Loi, the Orkoi, the Kiroisa, eitz. Again, it says that its corners and its length and the Kiroisa and its walls are all made out of wood. So Tanakh twice he talks about the fact that it's made out of wood. Then he concludes the pasuk by Daber Eliza Shulchan Hashem Hashem. Spoke to me. This is the table before Hashem. So yeah, so that answers the question why we had to come up with another answer that the Shulchan was portable. So now the Gemara, just as a side, says it's difficult to understand this pasuk. Pasuk b'mizbech. The pasuk opens up by saying the mizbech is made out of wood, and then the pasuk concludes b'shulchan. It says, "Vayidaber Eli zeh hashulchan." This is the table. We're talking about the mizbeach. How do you jump from the mizbeach to the table? is Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Loza. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Loza, his student. They both say, "Bisman shebeis hamigdash kayim." While the base hamigdash was standing, mizbeach mechaper alad. Mizbeach is what atones in a person. Of Achshav today, she'ain beis hamikdash kaim, but today that the beis hamikdash is no longer in existence. Shulchanoi shal adam mechaper olav. It's the shulchan, the table is mechaper. How is the table mechaper? So Rashi says when you invite poor people to your house, you're giving them tzedakah. Rabbi Gesher says not that's tzedakah. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about inviting friends to a meal. That's what is mechaper. But interesting, in Pirkei Avos, it says clearly in the parak we'll learn next week, the third parak, it says there that what do we learn? When is the table of Mizbeach? When you learn Torah, you say Divrei Torah at the table. When you're eating a meal, that is what makes your table of Mizbeach as Mechaper. It's interesting why the Rishonim here don't bring the Pirkei Avos. Instead of talking about Achnas Zorchim. Taisus brings Gedoylu Legima. It means that when you eat together, there's no way of getting through to a person other than through their stomach. And that's how you become close. And that's why we say that the table is mechaper.
Yeah, also say shleisha achlu v'lo b'nayim divrei Torah. Kilu achlu divrei mesim.
Yeah, but then continue. The end of that mission, it says so it says clearly that this possibly is referring to Torah, divrei Torah. So we have three different pshatim and what it means. Okay, let's continue. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to go through the shulchan and so on. Says the Gemara, Arba Snifi in Shalzov Hayu, that the table had these four vertical stands that were surrounding the shulchan, and we had a machlekes whether it started from the floor, worked its way up. In other words, if you learned the bread was like a table, was that the long bread and there was flaps are up. There was no room on the table to place these things because that took up the entire table. So where they stood, they stood on the floor itself, and went all the way up to the top of the 6 rows. As a machlekes whether it was 4 of them, 2 on each, 1 on each side of each maracha. Machlekes whether it was the total width of the maracha or just part of the width. So you had that. So there were 4 sniffin made out of gold. So you want to know how do you know that? Amar Rav Katina Rav says the first pasuk. What does it say in pasuk? It says the pasuk was sisa you should make karoisav, and we'll soon see what exactly each of these words mean. But karoisav, the Gemara says we'll soon touch what they are. The kapoisav, the kasoisav, umanaki. So what are these 4 different implements? So the Gemara teaches karoisav. You know what karoisav are? Elud fusin. These were the molds that they made the lechem upon. Kapoisav. What are kapoisav? Ela bezichin. These are the spoons that you placed the levina, the frank incense in. Kasoisav, elu sniffin. These are those 4 stands that we just said that held the bread up, and the bread was tough for the word kosher. Actually, the bread was tough and held the bread up. Umenaki yosef. And what are the menaki yosef? Elu kanim. These are the reeds. These are the poles that were sitting, horizontally on top of each loaf of bread. 3 on top of each loaf of bread, as we'll soon see. And then the pasuk says, "Asher yusach behen," that you covered them. Shemesachim azalechem. These kanim, they covered the loaves of bread, and the idea was to give a little bit of a gap, a little space, so that the air can flow through and they shouldn't rot. It's very interesting. The lechem aponim we just learned yesterday was a miracle, right? Sedudu, that the way they put it down is the way they took it off. So why did they have to put these kanim in there and to make sure they don't rot when the whole thing was a mess anyway? From the 7 days, it should be hot. It was a nest. So it's clear from here is that we still need to do everything we can on Piteva naturally to make sure that it remains fresh and everything else. And then the Eibishter makes the nest, this extra layer that had to happen. So about it further, Mosif Rabba asked the question. It says that Loi Sidra Kani, Loi Thalasa Deiches. As a Shabbos said, our Mishnah that neither organizing the kanim, on Shabbos, or removing them from the old batch or putting them in for the new batch is permitted on Shabbos. Now the question is, you just told me that that's pshat in the pasuk. Now if that's pshat in the pasuk in Chumash, then Mahatredi you have to put it in. What do you mean you're avoiding doing Shabbos? Why should it push away Shabbos? The Torah said you should do it. And we learned yesterday when we talked about you shouldn't do this on Shabbos. The reason is because it looks like binyan vistira. When you're taking out these kanim, it looks like you're demolishing, and when you're putting it back in, it looks like you're constructing. And that is the issue there. Hodar, Rashi said it's not because of shvus, because there's no shvus in the mikdash. But we did learn the Gemara Erevin at the very end. I think Tezin brings it down. The very end of Erevin says that degrees of shvusin, and certain shvusim were concerned with in the base Hamikdash as well. So you don't have to learn that it was binyan v'stira. You could just say it was a shvus like muktzah or strong. Okay, so I think Gemara says, Rabbi said, Lad milsi damri. This is what I said. My question is not really a valid question. Why not? Did not. We learned in this very mission. Klal Amru, there's a rule. Rabbi Kiva gives a general rule that is Kol Malach Shabbos, any malach could have done prior, we just learned this a few days ago. Any malach can be done before Shabbos, you have no right to do it on Shabbos. And here also, there's no reason to push away Shabbos. You could do it before. What do you mean? You could to pull out the things. What's going to happen for the last day? The last day or so, the bread is going to sit on top of the other bread. Such a short interval of time is not going to really ruin the bread on the bottom. And then you put the fresh bread, and Motzei Shabbos will put those kanim in there. Again, it's not such a big issue because only there for a few hours before you put the kanim in. So it says over here, time of mind, the whole reason why you're putting this kanim in so that the bread shouldn't rot because there's no air. After a short time, it won't rot. We're in Tzadik Zayin or Aleph, about 15 lines from the bottom of the page. Kiritanya, we learn Keitza. This is the order of events. Nichnis me'erev Shabbos. The Kohanim came in Erev Shabbos. The Shamton, and they pulled out these kanim umanichen la'arkin shashulchan. They set it up on the length of the table to be ready for the following night. Umotzai Shabbos. Nichnis, they would enter Magbia Reisha Shechala. They lift the chalos umachnis kana taktel. Place the kanim between the chalas. Now, how many kanim were there in total for each maracha? The chayzer magbir Reisha Shechala, and then you will lift the chala above that umachnis kana taktel and place the kanim there. So this is how it works. As we'll see, there were 6 rows of chalas. The very bottom chalas were sitting on the cold surface of the shulchan. It didn't require any kanim to lift it at all. Between the first and second row, between the second and third row, between third and fourth, or fourth and fifth, you had 3 kanim on the 2 ends and 1 in the middle. So you have 4 times 3 is 12. But then between the 5th row and the 6th one, it wasn't necessary to have 3 kanim because all you had was 1 loaf of 1 challah above that. And 1 challah is not that heavy, so 2 kanim would be sufficient. So total, there were 14 kanim per maracha, so the total between the 2 was 28. So abor challah tzicha shloisha kanim. 4 challahs required, between 1 and 2, and between up to 4, between 4 and 5, they all needed 3 kanim. The top row between the 5th and 6th, all you needed was 2. There's nothing heavy above that. And the very bottom row, don't require any kanim at all. Because it's sitting there on the surface of the shulchan, and that was enough to keep it cool. So the Gemara, we learned, Rab Meir says, Kol amas shahaya b'migdash. All the amas. What's an amma? We're going to learn the Gemara that even though we have one word called amma, an amma generally means the length of your hand from the middle finger down to the elbow. That's an amma. But there are different sizes of ammas. So where we generally learn always that an amma is made up of 6 tvachim, that's going to be referred to as an amma beinis, your average amma. But you can have an amma of 5 tvachim, and you can have an amma of something larger than 6 tvachim, as we'll see in the Gemara later. So the Gemara says, and in tvachim alone, we have tvachim sheichikus. We have tvachim where the thumb is sort of inside, tvachim where the thumb is on the outside. So that also is different measurements. So now we're going to have a machlekes Rab Meir, Rab Yehuda. The average amma, which is 6 tvachim, does that apply everywhere, or not in all cases? Says the Gemara. Rab Meir says as follows. So we learned. Rab Meir says all the ammas base of Mikdash with beinis were the average amma, which is 6 tvachim. Chutz mimizbeach hazov. The only exception is the golden mizbeach, the inner mizbeach. The inner mizbeach was an amma of 5 tvachim. The measure, even though it was measured by amma, but one amma was only contained 5 tvachim. And then the outer mizbeach, known as the mizbeach ha'oila, is there were different parts of that. Most of the Mizbech was measured by amas of 6 tvachim, but the keren, the 4 corners on top, Bahasaviv, and that platform, that rim in the middle, we'll talk about soon, Bahayisaid, and the base, those were, each one of them is an amma, but that amma was an amma made up of 5 tvachim. That's Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rameir, but he argues regarding all the utensils in the base of Mikdash. Rabbi Yehuda, amma binyan shisha tvachim. I agree with you. The building, the structure was 6 tvachim. Aber v'shal kelim, the utensils in the base of Mikdash are only 5. Rabbi Yehuda said, Ushneim mikra echad doshu. Rabbi Yehuda said that they both, Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda, dash in the same pasuk, and they argue about one word, a word that's coming to limit the zeh. How far do we take that limit of the zeh? Here it's going to be an exception, it'll only be 5 tvachim. How far do we take that? Says what's the pasuk that we're referring to in Yecheskel again? When he's describing the future base of Mikdash, the third base of Mikdash says, these are the measures of the mizbeach, the amas, using the method of amas. An amma is an amma v'tefech. Generally, an amma will be an amma and a tefech. In other words, an amma could be 5 tvachim, but for the mizbeach, we're using the amma of 6 tvachim, an amma and a tefech. And then he says, however, there were certain parts of the mizbeach where we used the amma, which is 5 tvachim. And which part are they? The chei ka'amma, the base was an amma, that's a 5 tvachim. We're soon discussing whether it's the vertical or the horizontal part of it. Then the amma reiche, and so too you have the amma reiche, which we'll see. That's the seiviv, that's the perimeter in the middle of the mizbeach. The kohen can step on and walk around. That's also an amma. And the gevula el sfosa, and from the border until the very end, until the edge, saviv around, surrounding it, is zeres. Zeres is a half of an amma, echad. Zeres echad. Now, what we're going to conclude that we're talking about here is the corners of the mizbech, and we're going to include that the corners of the mizbech, if you start from the middle, there was a half of an amma going in each direction. Those were the 3 exceptions, that their ammas were made up of 5 tvachim, not 6 tvachim. Then it says there, and we'll come back to all that soon, but let's conclude the pasuk. Then it says, V'zeh gav hamizbech. This is the top of the mizbech. And the Gemara out, Chek amma is a yisoid. The chek amma, that's the yisoid, that's the very base. And the amma reichos, zeh seided. This is the perimeter around, the middle of the mizbech where the kohenim used to walk around. Those were an amma. And v'gvula el svasa, saviv. And when we say that from the border, svasa, to the very end, saviv, all around it, zeres echad, is elu kronos, that what? Each, if you're right in the middle, then in each side is a half an amma, another total is an amma. These are the corners. All of those, the amma is made up of 5 tvachim. But then the pasuk says, zeh gav hamizbech. And this also describes the golden mizbech, the inner mizbech, zeh mizbech hazav. So what do you mean zeh? This. So Rameir says, Zehu ba'amba bas chamisha. The Mizbeach Hazav is called a utensil, so small it can be moved about. So Rameir says, Zehu, this is the only utensil that is made up of an amma of bas chamisha, that's made up of 5 tvachim. Hakol ammas kelim ba'amba sheker. All other utensils are measured by an amma that's made up of 6 tvachim. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, zeh means this is the paradigm, but this, just like this Mizbeach Hazav is a utensil, it's like a utensil, and it's an amma made up of 5 tvachim, so too all the utensils of the base of Mikdash we measured were 5 tvachim ammas. Kazeh yiu kol ammas kelim. All the kelim of the base of Mikdash should be like that, an amma of 5 tvachim. Now, when we translated before, that we said Yisoid, he said Ugvula el Sfasa, the boundary up to the edge, Saviv Zeres Echad. So we said it's talking about the corners on top of the Mizbech. But there's a possibility. We thought something else. First, we thought that you talk about the Yisoid, the base, you talk about the Saviv, and when we say from the border to the end, we mean from the Yisoid up to the Saviv. So quickly, the measures of the Mizbeach, we'll see it later. The Yisoid was 1 amma high. Then from the Yisoid to the Seviv was another 5 ammas. So it's a total of 6. And then from the Seviv up to the top of the Mizbeach was another 3 amas, that makes it 9, and then the kronos were another amma, which makes a total of 10. So Kasav, initially we thought that when you said that the measure of amas is made up of 5 tvachim, you meant from the, not just the Yesod is 5 tvachim, but also that region between the Yesod and the Seiv, all those amas, the 5 amas there, they're all made up of 5 tvachim amas. That's what the Gemara thought. Kasav, we initially thought, me Yesod, the ad Seiv is ba'ama b'asei b'goyim. Now, how do we know we were wrong? This is what he meant. From the base. The ad reicham till the seviv bas chamisha. So a total of 6 amas were made up of 5 tvachim. So what you have is the following: the yesod is 1 amma, 5 tvachim. The next 5 amas traveling up till the get to the seviv is 5 amas made up of 5 tvachim. So they have 6 amas, a total of 5 tvachim. And then the next 3 amas above, between the Seiviv and the top of the Mizbeach is a standard Amma, which is 6 tvachim. And then the Kronos, at that stage, we think it's also a full Amma of 6 tvachim. So you have 4 Ammas of 6 tvachim and 6 Ammas of 5 tvachim. If you add all that up, 6 times 5 is 30, and 4 times 6 is 24. So in other words, the Mizbeach was 54 tvachim tall. So what's the problem with that? We know that we have, I'm just telling you what we're talking about. We have a thing called the Chut HaSikra. There's this red line right in the middle of the Mizbeach, and it's played a pivotal role because the Karban Chatas had to be sprayed above this Chut HaSikra, and the Karban Oila of a Behema had to be sprayed below the Chut HaSikra. When it came to the bird, we learned it's just all the way around. Came to the bird, the Chatas Ha'oif, for a poor person would embarrass him, the Chatas Ha'oif was below the red line, and the Oila Ha'oif was above the red line. The bottom line is that this red line was the epicenter of the Mizbeach. Well, if the Mizbeach is 54 tvachim tall, then the red line was 27 tvachim high. Midpoint, 27 tvachim high. And what's the problem with that? And the Seiviv is 30 tvachim high. So the Seiviv is always higher than the Chut HaSikra. The Seiviv is, remember, it's the 6 amas of 5 tvachim, 30 tvachim. So the Seiviv is 30 tvachim above the ground, and the Chut HaSikra is 27 tvachim, the midpoint, above the ground. 3 tvachim below the Seiviv. What's the problem with that? The Gemara is now going to explain what we just said and prove that it cannot be pshat the way we just learned, that between the Yesod and the Seiviv, all the amas are made up of 5 tvachim. And why not? Says the Gemara, because how could that we thought me? So I say, Bas hey, be given height. My cheka amma, reichel hachakama. This is what the passing meant. May cheka amma, the ad reichel amma from the very bottom of the base until the Seiviv is what? Is bas chamisha 5 tvachim. And then we realize it's wrong. Why? Because Goiva HaMizbeach Kamavi, how tall is the actual Mizbeach? Is Eser Amas. We know the Mizbeach is 10 Amas tall because the Mizbeach was the same height as the Kroshim, the pillars around the Mizbeach. Well, according to this understanding, she's 6 of the Amas, the Yesod, and the next 5 to the Seiviv, is Berech Hamisha made up of 5 tvachim. And Ba'aboyi, and the 4 Amas above that is B'nei Shisa. The 4 above that is made up of 6. Well, Mizbeach Kamahava, so how tall would the entire Mizbeach be? Because right now we think the Kronos are made up of Amas, also 6 tvachim. So you have 4 Amas of 6, 24, and 6 Amas of 5, 30. So how tall was the Mizbeach? Chamshin va'abo, 54. Paul gave the Mizbeach Havi, when you're going to pinpoint the Chut HaSikra, where would be the midpoint? Esim v'shiva, 27 tvachim. Mikronas va'ad Seiviv Kamahava, and then if you go from the Kronos until the Seiviv, if you go that distance, well, there's 4 amas there, 6 tvachim, 24 tvachim. Kamahava esim abo. So Kama Batzir the Palgam Mizbeach, how far do you have to travel from the Seiviv to get to the Chut HaSikra, that red line? Glossa, 3 tvachim, right? But this is 3 tvachim high, the Seiviv, and that's 27 tvachim high, the midpoint. What's the problem? Because the Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, it says Chut Shel Sikra Chayim, so that this red line is right in the smack in the middle of the Mizbeach. Kedei Lahavla, and this plays a pivotal role to separate between the blood above the line and below the line. Okay, so what's the problem? Al-Hadatani, we learned the Braisa, Gabi Oila Sa'oif. We learned the Braisa describing the activities when you do with an Oila Sa'oif. By a bird, it's the other way around than by an animal. By a bird, the Oila Sa'oif is what you spray above the red line. So the kohen would go up the ramp, and then he would turn to the Seiviv, that's where he walk. And he would walk. When he went up the ramp, he would make a right turn, Remember, when you're coming into the Beis Hamikdash, always picture this. When you come into the Beis Hamikdash, you're always coming from the east, going to the west. And then on your right side is the north, and on your left side is the south. And that is why all the Gemaras that have pictures, they always have it the other way around, and it's very difficult to actually picture it in your mind. But if you picture it in your mind, you're walking. Looking at the pictures will confuse you. Imagine there's no picture. So what you, our youngest member in the shir, very nice to see. When you imagine you're walking into the Beis Hamikdash, you should always picture this in your mind. If you're walking in from the east and you're going due west, your right side is the north. That's where they shechted the kabbanas, and the left side is the ramp of the mizbech. Right side is Safan, left side is Durham. You're coming in from Mizrach, and the Beis Hamikdash is on the Ma'ariv. So the Kohen would go up the ramp. He's on the south side of his bed, coming up the ramp. He would make a right to go to the east. The southeastern corner is where he would do the malika, would do the activities, because that's where they throw all the junk from the bird, right there by the heap of ashes, on the by the desha there on the side. So he would go up the ramp. He would go ahead and do the malika, which is using his thumbnail. Memul arpa from the back, break his back. Mavdil, and he would separate. You don't cut off the head completely, but separate it. As dama al would either stand a little bit of distance and give a squeeze, and the blood would flow out, or you would actually place it against the wall and squeeze it. Then it says in the bright in the Mishnah follows the im also lemata maraglov. I mean, practically speaking, it's very hard to imagine this. You're standing on this seidiv, it's an amma wide, okay, it's not that wide, and you're going to bend down lower than you are, and you're going to bend down and to squeeze the bird below there. It's still all right if it's above the red line. So it says if you below the afila amachas, even though you're one amma below yourself, shade is kosher because it's above the red line. Here it's the Mishnah is telling you clearly that 6 tvachim below the seiviv is still considered above the red line. But the calculations we just made from the seiviv to the red line was only 3 tvachim. So the calculations here don't compute. He says, even one amma is kosher. Now let's assume the ammas are 5 tvachim. So if you go down 3 tvachim, there's still 2 tvachim left until the red line. So obviously you're wrong. So therefore we come to the conclusion when it says over here, misfas, from the end, from the border up to the end, to the edge over there, we're not talking about the area of the mizbech between the base and the seiviv. We're talking about actually the corner, the 4 kronos on top of the mizbech. And the cheka amma is knisa. Yeah, the cheka amma is what you call is the base. And amma reichiv is knisa. And amma reichiv is okay. So therefore, this is what we say the calculations are. The chek amma is the yesod, and it's the horizontal part that's an amma. The knisa amma we're talking about is the seiviv, and it's the horizontal part. Reichiv knisa and gevula. When it says gevula el svasa saviv, and when we say that the gevula el knosa all around there, we're talking about is talking about knisa again. So we have here. We're saying right now that we're talking about the 3 parts of the outer mizbeach. That's only an amma of 5 tvachim is the kronos, the corners on top, the seiviv, and the base. And we're saying not the vertical part of it, we're talking about the horizontal part of it, which means that the vertical part of mizbeach, the vertical part of the side is a regular amma of 6 tvachim. It's only the horizontal part that's 5 tvachim. Well, in that case, all the ammas of the mizbeach vertically are 6 tvachim. So you have 10 ammas tall. How tall is the mizbeach? 60. And then what will be the halfway point of 60 ammas? 30. So the chut hasika will be 30 tvachim above the ground. But the seiviv to the very top is 4 ammas. 4 ammas times 6 is 24. So the seiviv was 24 tvachim from the top, and the chut hasikra was 30 tvachim from the top. So how many tvachim gap is there between the seiviv and the blue line and the red line? Is 6 tvachim. Exactly what we said. That you can bend down up to an amma and squeeze out the blood, and it's still considered above the red line. So that's how the Gemara wants to compute now. We'll soon see that's wrong also. Says the Gemara, So Mizbeach Kamahava, how tall was the Mizbeach according to this calculation? Shisin, total of 60. Palgan Mizbeach Kamahava, so where's the midpoint? Plus in 30. Mikronas Vatseva Kamahava, and then you go from the Kronos until the Seviv, which is 4 amas, 6 tvachim is 24. Havachav Dalit. Kama Botza the Palgan Mizbeach Shisha. So now, from the Seviv, how the gap between the Seviv and the red line was 6 tvachim. Right? Again, because the red line is 6 amas from the bottom, and 6 amas times 5 is 30 tvachim. So it's 30 tvachim above the ground. The Seviv, the red line was exactly 30 tvachim because that's the midpoint. 10 amas high, midpoint is 30 tvachim. But the Seviv was 6 amas above the ground, and 6 times 6 is 36. So it was 6 tvachim above the red line. Perfect. Now, and this is what we learned. If you bent down, and right, and afila ama achas, even below an ama below your feet, shaylis kosher. Obviously, he's talking about this case. Everything works out perfectly. So the Gemara, it's not so simple. So why is that simple? So you're learning that all of these amas of 5 tefachim was the horizontal part. And why that's not simple is because we have a calculation. We worked out every single amma in the Beis Hamikdash, including the Azoras, the courtyards, and the calculations will not compute if we say that the base was not an amma of 6 tvachim, but rather an amma of 5 tvachim. And why is that? Because we learned, remember, we went in detail, we learned that there was a malbin, there was a mold of 32 amas by 32 amas. They put the mold down on the ground. This is how they built the Mizbech. They put this mold on the ground, 32 by 32. They filled it up with rocks and cement and all these things, and it dried and became the platform. Then they built above that 5 amas. And in that 5 amas, they indented 1 amma, which means that the malbim was 32 by 32, but the next level was 30 by 30. Right? We cut an amma on each side. The truth of the matter is, we learned also last time that the eastern side and the southern side practically didn't have anything protruding, only an amma on each end. It was only the Ma'ariv side and the northern side that had this yisoid completely surrounding it. But anyway, so we moved an amma, and now it's 30 by 30. The obvious problem is that all the other ammas we counted was 6 tvachim. So the problem is, it's not, we cut down not a full amma, we only cut down 5 tvachim, which means you have really 30 and 2 tvachim, a tefach on each side. Why would the Mishnah say that you have the next layer was 30 ammas by 30 ammas? It actually was 30 ammas and 2 tvachim. Right? But 30 ammas and 2 tvachim, because that's the dimension. Because what you took off from the bottom was not 6 tvachim, but only 5 tvachim. And the rest of the Mizbech is measured by ammas of 6 tvachim. So it's not 30 by 30, it's 30 plus the remaining 1 tefach that you cut out when you measure the Yesod. So that's problem number 1. So let's go through it. We work through each stage of the building of the Mizbech, the construction Mizbech. The Gemara says here, how can you tell me that we're talking about the Yesod, we're talking about the horizontal part? Now, didn't we learn Mizbeach that was 32 by 32? Ola Amma went up an Amma, it went in an Amma. Zeu Yesod, that's known as the Yesod, the base. Nimtza comes out at the next level, when you build now further up, was Shleishim al Shleishim, was 30 by 30. But it's not correct. If the Ammas you're telling me of the horizontal Ammas was actually 5 tvachim, so you're missing a tefach there. Is Shleishim v'shnei tvachim. So you have a tefach on all sides, extra is 30. Let's say the length is not 30 Ammas, it was 30 and 2 tvachim, 1 tefach on each side. And the width, the same thing. That's question number 1. Now let's go next part. The Su, then it continues. Allah Chamesh, it went up, it rose 5 amas from the base to get to the Seviv, then Mekanas Amma. When an Amma, and that's where the Kohen used to walk around. Right? So we were 30, and now we're the next part when they're going to build will be 28 by 28, because 1 amma that you're not building on each side, because that's where the Kohen will walk around. 28 by 28. But if you're telling me that an amma, there's a shortfall, an amma is only 5 tvachim, so you have a second shortfall now of another 2 tvachim, a tefach on each side. So now suddenly, if you, the aggregate between the base and the seviv, 4 tvachim are missing. And we continue. And Nimtza says there, Esim b'shmoin al Esim b'shmoin. So we're asked, Esim b'shmoin b'arba tvachim have it. It's 28 and 4 tvachim. The 2 tvachim from the base that wasn't cut off, and then the 2 tvachim from the side that wasn't cut off. Now you have a total of 4. So what are you going to answer me? We only do whole numbers. The chitema, you're going to answer me. We don't count it because why? Because it wasn't a full amma. So let's go further. Makam Kronos, the place of the Kronos, was amma mezeh amma mezeh. The Mishnah continues there. The Kronos again occupied an amma. So the space between the Kronos now is down to 26 by 26 because we cut out another amma on all sides by these Kronos. But again, what was the amma measurement of the Kronos? Only 5 tvachim. So now you have a tefach on each side. That's 2 more. So if you add the three areas where the ammas are 5 tvachim, and you have 2 sides, so you have 2, 4, 6. You have a full 6 tvachim, a full amma. It's no longer fractions. The calculation is that the top was not 24, it was 25 by 25 because you have a full amma that wasn't taken up. Says the Gemara. Sorry, to be 27. The Mishnah says if you remove the area of the Kronos, what do you have in between? 26 by 26. The question is, no, you don't. You have 27 by 27 because each of those 3 ammas were 5 tvachim. So you have 3 tvachim on each side. That's 6 tvachim, full amma. Says the Gemara, you know what? Loydok. We weren't so pedantic and we weren't so particular in the exact measurements. So Gemara continues the question. Then it says that Mokum Hilach Ragla the Kaim had to walk around the top of the Mizbeach around the Maracha. They hung around near the Kronos, and that took another Amma. So the circumference, that whole area there, they took another Amma. Amma Mezeh, Amma Mezeh. Nimtza comes out. What was the actual space on top of the Mizbeach that was used to burn things? It was reduced from 26 down to 24 because you lost another amma on each side. Nimtza esi v'arba l'esi v'arba. Again, remember we lost the whole amma because all the ammas of those 3 sections were only 5 tvachim, so you have 3 tvachim on each side. There's another amma, so it's not 24 by 24, it's actually 25 by 25. So what do you tell me? That we weren't particular. But here you can't tell me that. You know why? Careful, because there's a pasuk, and psukim are very particular. Every word in Tanakh is very, very particular. And it says in Yecheskel again, it says Ariel is the area, the surface area where they used to burn things on the Mizbeach. The Ariel was 12 by 12. Ravua, and they were made of 4 quarters. They were made of 4 quarters, 4 quadrants. And Yochel, I would have thought, just reading the pasuk, I would have thought the entire surface of the mizbech that was usable was 12 by 12, but we know it isn't. 24, 24. It says in that very pasuk that the area was 12 by 12. This is only 1 quadrant, and there were 4 quadrants. That means it was 24 by 24. You're measuring from the middle, from going each direction is 12 by 12. So what do we have now? The pasuk clearly says 24 by 24. And according to your calculation, if it's talking about depth, that the ammas were not 6 tvachim but 5, then we have an extra amma here that's not accounted for. It should really be the surface of Mizbeach that was usable was 25 by 25, not 24 by 24. So the chitema, there's another, maybe being devil's advocate, you can say that she's menayu mikara ba'amba bas chamisha maislu. Maybe who told you we cut anything off? Maybe what happened was from the very outset, from the very beginning, when they built the Mizbeach, they made it that these ammas, that the mold initially, when they made the mold, so you understood they made it 32 by 32, and then only 5 tvachim of it was not being used, and all those questions. No, when they made the mold, they made it so that the Yisod, the very bottom, was the last amma was only 5 tvachim, not 6, and therefore there was no shortfall of a tefach. When they built the rest, the next stage, it was actually 30 by 30, because we understood that they put a mold of 32 by 32 of 6 tvachim, and then we only allowed a space of 5 tvachim, so we have that extra tefach remaining there. We're telling you that's how it happened. Maybe the chatchila, they built 30 by amma, 30 ammas of 6 tvachim, and then the last amma on all the sides, they only made it 5 tvachim. So there's no shortfall. So somebody can't say that. Why not? Because in Cain, if so, the vochelu azora, you have extra space in the azora. You have extra space in the azora. What do you mean extra space? Because everything is accounted for in the azora. Now we learned the Mishnah. Kol Azara, we learned the entire Azara, including incorporating the courtyards at the base of Mikdash. We're not talking about the Ezras Nashim. We're talking about once you walked up the steps. Is as follows: Oirich, the length was Meya Ushmoini v'Sheva, 187 long. Al Reichav on a width of Meya v'Shloisha v'Chamash, 135 wide, and 187 long. And let's talk only about the length. Remember, you're walking into the base of Mikdash on the eastern flank, and you're going towards west, due west. So starting from the opening, the door, you're going in, Meya Ushmayim Meshab. There's 187 amos. Mokum, this is Ragli Yisrael, the first initial Achas Esei Amos, the first 11 amos was Mokum of Ragli Yisrael. That's called Ezes Yisrael. Right? Anybody, Yid can go there, anybody can go there, Ezes Yisrael. Then the next one is Mokum, this is Ragli Koinim, and then you have the place of the Ragli and the Koinim. Is Achas Esei Amos, the further 11 amos, and that's for the kohenim. But there, even a kohen balmum who's not qualified to avoid it, even a Yisrael can go there sometimes to do smicha. It's not exclusive to the kohenim, but primarily kohenim. Then the mizbech we learned just now shloishim v'shtayim. There was 32 amos in the mizbech. Then bein ulam l'mizbech, between the ulam, the courtyard, and mizbech was esim v'shtayim. There was another 22 amos between the mizbech and the base Hamikdash, and those 22 amos was only assigned for kohenim who are road to do avodah. Then you have a heichel, the actual base Hamikdash itself was meya amma, was 100 amma, and achas esrei amma chaydi base kapodas. And then behind the kodesh kadoshin there was a gap there that it was 11 amos. Generally, it wasn't really used for anything. Only the maintenance people came through there, or in Yom Tov, when it was very, very busy, the people couldn't just stay in the front. They also went around the whole mizbech, around the sides, including the back. So now, l'chayda, we have extra space here. According to you, the mizbech is not really 32 by 32. You have extra space. What do they count that for? So the Gemara therefore concludes, maybe So the question therefore really is, so what exactly happened? How do we measure the mizbech? Well, you can't be talking about the depth, because then you are missing what do you call it? You are missing some area here that's not accounted for. So therefore the Gemara says, I'll tell you how it works. So we changed our mind again. Some parts of the mizbech was in depth, and some parts was horizontal, and some parts. The only three areas we're talking about. We're talking about the kronos, we're talking about the seviv, and we're talking about the yisaid. Some of them were the horizontal part was made up of 5 tefachim, the amma, and some of them it was the vertical part. And the Gemara explains as follows. Ella, cheka amma, the yisaid is begoiva. We're talking about the height of an amma. Because as we just explained, the mizbech was 32 ammas by 32 ammas, and that's how it is. And that accounts for that's why that Mishnah that gives an account, a reckoning of every single inch in the base of Mikdash is all accurate. Okay. So meanwhile we have 1 am of 5 tefachim in the height. Then amma reichik nisa. Then when it comes to the sefer, we're talking about horizontal, the depth. And gevula el svasa savi. When we talk about the kronos, what are we talking about over there? When we talk about the kronos, we're talking about, we don't care. It doesn't really make a difference whether the ammo is 5 tefachim going up or going down. It doesn't matter. And why? Because since we only count full amos, it doesn't matter whether it's 2 tefachim on accounted for. Because right now we're saying here is that the yisoid, that the sefer we're talking about, the yisoid was made up of 5 tefachim, so that we lost 2 tefachim there in the height, and what do you call it? And if even the kronos was not a full amma, it doesn't matter, because it's not a full amma. We don't count things which are less than a full amma. Okay. Now let's go back to this Bech and let's calculate according to New Cheshbon. So the Gemara is like follows: Mizbeach kama have the Mizbeach is how much the Mizbeach. No, the Quran. I don't care if you tell me it's vertical, even if it's horizontal. Even if it's horizontal, since the side we just said before is vertical, the Seiviv is horizontal, so you lost two tfachim there. So even the Kronos is also horizontal, and you lost two tfachim because of five tfachim, so you lost a total of four tfachim. It's not a full amma, and therefore the Mishnah wasn't that particular, didn't bother accounting for it. Fine. Because the Yisaid itself, which is the most important one on the floor, that's the full six tfachim horizontally. When we say five tfachim by the Yisaid, is the vertical. So now let's go to the base, to the Mizbech. Mizbech, Kamahava, the Mizbech is how tall now, according to this calculation. Chamshin v'tamnaya. The Mizbech we're saying right now is a total of this 10 amas. The only, and the Yisaid was five tfachim. Okay, the Yisaid is five tfachim, so it's 58. The 58 tfachim high. So, okay, the 58 tfachim high. So in other words, we're assuming that the amma of the keren was only five tfachim, and the amma of the yisaid was only five tfachim. So you're missing two tfachim. So 10 times 6 is 60, minus those two tfachim is 58. So how tall was the mizbech? 58 tfachim. What's half of 58? 29. So the chut hasikra was 29 tfachim from above the ground. Now, what about the Seiviv? There was three amas from the Seiviv. The three amas from the Seiviv was 6 tfachim, was 18. The Keren was 5 tfachim, so it's 23. So the Seiviv was 23 tfachim from the top, and the red line was 29 tfachim from the top. The difference between 23 and 29 is 6 tfachim. And that's what that Mishnah says. You can stoop down up to an amma, and you're still spraying the blood, or squeezing the blood out above the red line. Says the Gemara. How tall was the Bech? Chamshim v'tamnaya, 58. Because the Keren was only at 5 tfachim, and the Yisaid was 5 tfachim. You're missing 2, that makes 58. If you want to make the red line, where would you make it? Have you had some petition? Will be 29. Then mikronas v'atzeiv kamahava, and then if you go from the save, you go to the very top of the keren. 3 full amas of 6 tfachim and 1 amma of 5. Is kamahava, that makes a total of esim klosa, 23. Kama botzir lepalga the mizbech. So how far do you have to travel from the save, which is 23 tfachim from the top, to the red line, which is 29 tfachim from the top? She says 6. And the Tanan we learned. If you stoop down even up to an amma, sheda is kosher. It works out perfectly. So now the most final conclusion is that the keren was 5 tfachim high, the yisaid was 5 tfachim high, but the seivid was 6 tfachim in. They can have prove it to you that the seivid was different than the yisaid. The chsiv, because it says in Pasuk, cheka amma, when it talks about the yisaid, it uses the word cheka amma, the structure of amma. And the amma reicha, but when it talks about the seiviv, it says the amma reicha, the width of an amma changes the way it describes it. So Shmamna is a proof that we're not talking about the same thing. So, and this finishing. Whatever kama amma beinis, we say an average amma. How many tfachim is an average amma? I'm going to be 6 tfachim. How do you know? I'm going to look in the Mishnah. Rameir says, Hashulchan, how long was the table? He was calculating the lechem upon him. It was 12 tfachim long and 6 tfachim wide. The Torah says it was 1 amma wide and 2 ammas long. So it's clear from here that an amma is 6 tfachim. Miklal dahave amma. From here, so it's clear that what? That it is an amma. Okay, tomorrow you can see the Gemara already. There's the other side of an amma. But this is a middle amma, so there must be another amma which is even greater than that, which we'll see tomorrow. Okay, have a good one.